You know, usually when we crack open the history books to look at the greats, we're dealing with statues, cold, marble, very still,
Very dead.
very dead.
Yeah.
But today feels different. We're looking at someone who, even 2,000 years later, just refuses to sit still. The source we're using describes her not as a monument, but as a living question mark.
And that is a fantastic way to frame it. Because let's be honest, history has been arguing about this woman for, what, 20 centuries now?
Right.
Was she a seductress? A political genius? Or, and this is where the source gets really interesting, was she something far more dangerous to the men writing the history books? Someone who just understood human nature better than anyone else in the room?
That's the angle I want to get into. Today, we are deep diving into a text called The Architect of the Nile. And what hooked me right away is that it promises to, strip away the Hollywood gloss. We aren't here for the Elizabeth Taylor version with the heavy eyeliner and all that. We are here to look at a terrified young woman who had to figure out how to outsmart an entire dynasty just to survive.
It's a necessary correction, I think. We get so distracted by the romance, the tragedy, the Shakespeare of it all, that we miss the actual job she was doing.
Which was what?
She's a political survivalist.
Yeah.
I mean, the mission of this deep dive is to move past the myth and really look at the mechanics.
Yeah.
How did she actually wield power in a world that, frankly, wanted her dead?
And let me tell you, the source material does not skimp on the drama. We've got ships with purple sails, golden banquets, empires crumbling. But my job today is to be a bit of a skeptic.
Okay.
Because it's easy to get swept up in the whole girl boss narrative. But I want to know if she was actually effective or if she just had, really good PR.
Oh, she was effective. But to understand how, we have to destroy the first misconception people have. If you look at where she started, the fact she survived her teenage years is like a statistical miracle.
A miracle.
We have to ground this in the brutal reality of the Ptolemaic dynasty.
Yeah.
This wasn't a fairy tale. It was a nightmare.
Okay, let's unpack that first, because the source calls her origin story the House of Cards. I think most people, and I include myself in this until I read this, assume that because she was the queen of Egypt, she was, well, Egyptian.
Right. And that's not right at all. That is the first crucial detail. Cleopatra was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty. They were a Greek family.
A Greek family.
They had been ruling Egypt for about 300 years, ever since Alexander the Great conquered the place. But here's the thing. They were essentially occupiers. They were colonizers.
So she's Greek.
Culturally, linguistically, ethnically, yes. The armies lived in Alexandria, which was basically a Greek city on the edge of Egypt. They looked toward Athens. They kept Greek laws. They barely interacted with the millions of actual Egyptians down the Nile who were paying all the taxes.
That sounds incredibly precarious.
It was. You're the ruler, you're taking all the money, but the people you're ruling view you as a total foreigner.
So you have that pressure.
Exactly. The source describes her palace as a place that glittered, but it was built on sand. You have the resentment of the Egyptian people on one side, but the real danger was coming from inside the house. Literally.
This is the part that always just blows my mind. The family values of the Ptolemies. It reads like a horror movie.
Family values is a very generous term.
Yeah.
It was a tradition of absolute betrayal. To keep the bloodline pure, brothers were expected to marry sisters.
Right.
But then to keep the crown for themselves, they would inevitably plot to kill one another. Fathers killing sons, sisters poisoning brothers. It was a Shark Tank.
So just paint the picture for me. You're Cleopatra, you're a teenager, you're born into this immense wealth, but you know that your siblings, the people you eat dinner with, are effectively your biggest rivals for survival.
That's the context. The source points out that the stories that we usually tell, they skip the fear. They skip the nights where she must have laid awake wondering if her food was poisoned. She realized very early on that royal blood was not enough to keep her safe.
If anything, it made her a target.
In the Ptolemaic family, blood just paints a target on your back.
So what's the play? If you can't trust your family and the people you rule see you as a foreigner, how do you not just get overthrown immediately?
She needed instincts. And, more importantly, she realized she needed to become something her ancestors weren't. This is where we see the rebranding of a queen.
The source mentions that she bothered to understand Egypt, which to me feels like a pretty low bar. Oh, I bothered to learn about the country I own. Is that really such a genius move, or was the bar just like on the floor?
The bar was in the basement.
Yeah.
But you have to understand the arrogance of her ancestors. For 3 centuries, they didn't bother to learn the local language. They spoke Greek.
The entire time.
The entire time. Cleopatra was the first Ptolemaic ruler to actually learn Egyptian.
Wait, really? 300 years of rulers and nobody picked up a Rosetta Stone?
Nobody. So imagine the impact when this young queen stands up and speaks to the priests, to the people, in their own tongue. It sounds basic to us.
Oh, Lord.
But for the time, it was revolutionary. It was a massive signal of respect.
It differentiates her. She's saying, I'm not just a landlord, I'm a participant.
Exactly. And she went further. She honored the local gods, not just the Greek ones. She didn't just present herself as a distant administrator. She presented herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis, a living symbol of the land.
I love that phrase from the text, a living symbol.
Mm.
It's like she realized that if she wanted job security, she couldn't just be a political figure. She had to be an avatar of Egypt itself.
Precisely. The source frames this perfectly. It wasn't a hobby. It wasn't because she just loved linguistics or theology. It was a survival strategy.
Mm-hmm.
In the ancient world, power relied on belief as much as it relied on swords. If the people believed you were divinely appointed, if they believed you were one of them, you were safer. She made herself believable.
So she builds this base of support. She's securing the home front. But then reality hits. And by reality, I mean her brother, because of course she's co-ruling with her brother, who is also her husband.
Super gross.
Yeah, gross. And he decides he wants the whole pie.
Right. It's the classic Ptolemaic move. He pushes her out. She's exiled. And this is the moment where most people in history would just fade away. She's young. She's outgunned. She's camped out in the desert. But she waited. She planned.
And then the opportunity arrives. But it's not just an opportunity, it's a crisis. Rome has entered the chat. Julius Caesar lands in Alexandria.
And we have to pause here because the Roman context is so vital. Rome is in the middle of its own civil war. Caesar has chased his rival, Pompey, all the way to Egypt.
Okay.
She lands there. And suddenly, he's the referee in the Egyptian civil war between Cleopatra and her brother.
So she needs a meeting with the referee, but she can't just walk in the front door. Her brother's armies are blocking the city.
Correct. And this leads to the moment everyone knows.
The carpet, the rug, the laundry bag, whatever it was.
The most famous entrance in history.
But hold on, is this real? Or is this just ancient Hollywood?
The source makes a really important distinction here. It says, whether the specific detail of the carpet is factually true matters less than the dynamic it reveals.
Okay.
Because think about what that move represents. It's a heist. It's a tactical infiltration. She's smuggling herself past enemy lines.
It's definitely bold.
It's more than bold. She's 21. Caesar is 52. He's the conqueror of the known world. She's an exiled queen living in a tent. But when she unrolls from that carpet, she hasn't just arrived. She has proven something.
What's that?
She's proven she can outwit an army. She's proven she has grit.
She didn't beg, that's the key, right? She didn't throw herself at his feet and cry.
No, she negotiated. That is the powerful reframe the source gives us. She wasn't asking for a favor. She was proposing a business deal, a merger.
I have something you need.
Precisely. Caesar needed money. He had armies to pay. Egypt was the wealthiest nation in the Mediterranean. Cleopatra needed an army to get her throne back.
It's guns for gold.
It's a transaction. The source breaks it down. She offered beauty. Yes, let's not be naive. That was part of the arsenal. But crucially, she offered alliance. She offered stability. Caesar restored her throne, and in exchange, she gave him the resources of the Nile.
And eventually a son, which really seals the deal.
It anchors the alliance in blood.
So after this alliance is struck, she's back on top, queen again. And the source mentions something fascinating about her leadership style. It says, gold was not decoration, it was language. Can we dig into that? Isn't that just showing off?
It is showing off, but with a purpose. She knew that power must be seen to be believed. In the ancient world, you didn't have a 24-hour news cycle to tell people the economy was good. You had to show them.
Right.
She used spectacle, ceremony, incredible displays of wealth to communicate stability. When people saw her covered in pearls, hosting lavish banquets, they didn't just see a rich lady. They saw a strong Egypt.
But to Rome, that was a different story, wasn't it?
To Rome, she was a problem, a threat disguised as a queen. Rome prided itself on austerity, on toughness, and here comes this foreign queen, richer than God, having a child with their favorite general.
It's a clash of cultures.
And a clash of egos. She was a foreign queen with a claim to Caesar's legacy, and that is a very dangerous combination.
And then the world breaks again. Caesar is assassinated, the Ides of March, and suddenly Cleopatra is back on that shaky ground. Her protector is gone.
This is the pivot point. The ground shifts. Rome fractures into another civil war, and she has to make another choice. She has to pick a side again. Enter Mark Antony.
Now, I've always found this shift interesting. The source draws a huge contrast between Caesar and Antony. Caesar was the calculated chess player, but Antony, he seems different.
Completely different energy. Antony was warmer, louder, more reckless. He was a man of appetites. He liked to drink. He liked to fight. He liked to be adored.
So she can't use the same playbook.
No, and being the genius she was, she didn't. She adapted perfectly. With Caesar, it was a boardroom deal. With Antony, the source calls their bond combustible. She met him on his level.
The source mentions the famous meeting at Tarsus. She didn't just show up. She staged a production.
Oh, it was theater. She arrives on a barge with purple sails, which was an outrageously expensive dye.
Insanely expensive.
Silver oars, keeping time to music. She's dressed as Aphrodite. She set the stage so that the very winds seemed lovesick.
It feels like she created a fantasy world for him.
She did, and that was the strategy. She created a shared world of excess. They dressed as gods. They held these massive feasts, the society of inimitable livers, that blurred the line between politics and performance.
It sounds exhausting, honestly, but I get the strategy. If Caesar was about business, Antony was about ego, and she fed that ego.
She became the mirror he wanted to see. But by aligning herself with Antony, she was betting on the strongest horse, or so she thought. They weren't just lovers. They were trying to build a rival empire in the East.
But that theatricality, that living as gods thing, that gave their enemies a lot of ammunition, didn't it? Because meanwhile, back in Rome, you've got Octavian.
Octavian. Very calculated. He's the anti-Antony. And he uses this against them brilliantly. This is where the propaganda war begins.
Right.
And this is honestly where the version of Cleopatra that most people know, the seductress, the witch, was actually manufactured.
So you're saying the femme fatale image was essentially a smear campaign?
Well, 100%. The source explains this so clearly. Rome was fracturing from within. It was a civil war between Octavian and Antony. But Octavian couldn't tell the Roman people, yeah, I'm going to kill Antony, your fellow Roman. Romans hated civil war.
So he needed a different enemy. A foreign one.
Exactly, a scapegoat. So he points the finger at Cleopatra. He says, I'm not fighting Antony. Antony's a victim. He's been bewitched by this foreign sorceress.
It's not his fault. It's the evil witch.
Right. They painted her as a spellcaster.
Right.
A foreign temptress who had unmanned a Roman hero. It was a narrative designed to unite Rome against a common enemy. And it worked.
That is so cynical and so effective. It really changes how you see those stories. She was fighting a PR war.
And she was losing. Octavian's narrative was stronger, and his navy was stronger.
Which brings us to the final act, Battle of Actium. They're defeated. They retreat to Alexandria. Octavian is closing in. The text says her legacy was circling like vultures. That is a haunting image.
It is. And this is the moment of the final choice. Antony falls on his sword. Cleopatra is captured. And she knows exactly what comes next.
We need to explain what captured means in this context. It's not just prison.
No, it's the Roman triumph. If Octavian takes her back to Rome alive, she will be put in chains, probably gold chains, to be ironic. She will be paraded through the street.
Humiliation.
Complete and total humiliation. The destruction of that living symbol she spent her whole life building. She would become just another conquered barbarian, a prop in his victory lap.
So we have the famous death, the asp, the snake in the basket.
And again, the source pivots us away from the romance of it. Whether it was a snake or poison hidden in a hairpin, and historians still argue about it, the mechanics are irrelevant. The source frames this as her final power move.
Act of control.
Exactly. It was a refusal to be owned. By taking her own life, she denied Octavian his prize. She robbed him of his perfect victory moment. He walked into her chambers hoping to drag a queen out, and instead he found a monarch who had already left.
The text says she would not let history finish her sentence. That gave me chills. It's like even in death, she insisted on holding the pen.
It's the ultimate assertion of sovereignty. You can conquer my land, you can defeat my armies, but you cannot possess me. Even Octavian had to respect it. He was furious, but he buried her with honors.
So when we look back at this source, the architect of the Nile, what are we left with? We've gone from the scared girl in a shark tank of a palace to the woman who terrified Rome.
I think the key takeaway is that she used intelligence where everyone else used force. Rome was a hammer. She was water. She flowed around obstacles. She adapted. She changed shape. She used her identity, her voice, her culture as armor.
And yet we still argue about her. We still have that Elizabeth Taylor version in our heads.
We do. And the source suggests that is perhaps her greatest achievement. She blurred the line between myth and reality so effectively that we still can't quite see her clearly.
The source ends with a really provocative thought. It calls her a mirror held up to power.
Yes. It asks us to consider why she unsettles us. Why is she the only ancient woman everyone can name? Is it because of who she loved? Or is it because of how fully she ruled?
That's the lingering question.
She remains dangerous because she was a woman who didn't just survive in a man's world. She shaped it. She made the most powerful men of her era revolve around her. She wasn't an accessory to history, she was the engine of it.
And she did it without a massive army of her own, really. She did it with her mind.
And that is far more dangerous, as we said at the start, than any army. Someone who understands people better than they understand themselves.
It really makes you rethink the standard history class version. It wasn't about love, it was about leverage.
Leverage, legacy, and the refusal to be forgotten. And looking at us now, 2,000 years later, still talking about her, I'd say she won that battle.
She definitely did. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
And to you listening, here is a final thought to mull over. If Cleopatra had been a man, doing exactly what she did, securing alliances, using marriage for politics, displaying wealth, would we remember her as a seducer, or would we just call her a brilliant diplomat?
That is the question, isn't it?
We'll let you chew on that one. We'll see you in the next deep dive.